the stories behind today's headlines, what really happened, and why it matters. Welcome to this special deep dive briefing. 3 major global events shaking politics, law, war, safety, and human tragedy. Over the last week, headlines have been dominated by 1. A stunning US military operation that resulted in the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. 2. Diplomatic efforts that have brought Ukraine and its allies 90% ready to a peace deal with Russia. 3. A horrific fire at a Swiss ski resort bar known as the Constellation tragedy, now the subject of a criminal investigation. Each of these is a complex story with regional roots and global consequences. Welcome to our channel, Novus Narrator. Remember to subscribe, like, share, and turn on the notification bell. Let's unpack the story one by one. Part 1. Operation Absolute Resolve. The capture of Nicolás Maduro. Before the operation, for years, tensions between the United States and Venezuela simmered over accusations that President Nicolás Maduro's government had become a hub for corruption, authoritarianism, and international criminal networks, including allegations of narcotics trafficking and collaboration with cartels. In 2025, the US Department of Justice issued indictments accusing Maduro and his inner circle of narco-terrorism and drug trafficking, pushing legal pressure toward an arrest that would be historic in scale. At the same time, diplomatic relations were shattered, sanctions tightened, and a US buildup in the region, what some intelligence sources refer to as Operation Southern Spear, quietly began months before January 2026. The operation unfolds. In the early hours of January 3, 2026, at about 02 Hunquas local time, US military forces initiated Operation Absolute Resolve, a coordinated series of airstrikes on Venezuelan military targets around Caracas, followed by an elite ground raid that led to the capture of Nicolás Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores. The operation reportedly involved over 150 military aircraft and advanced drones, special operations units, including elements of Delta Force and other elite forces, support from the FBI's hostage rescue team once Maduro was apprehended. According to official accounts, Maduro and his wife were flown out of Venezuela and arrived in New York to face federal charges in US court. An extraordinary outcome by any measure. Washington's narrative. From the US perspective, this was a strategic blow against international crime and a demonstration of military reach. President Trump publicly declared that the United States would temporarily run Venezuela and oversee political transition and economic stabilization, citing Venezuelan oil infrastructure and alleged ties to global criminal networks as key strategic concerns. Attorney General Pam Bondi described Maduro as one of the world's most notorious narco-traffickers and said accountability would finally be enforced. Reactions at home and abroad. The news ignited an instant global firestorm. In the US, some Republicans celebrated the removal of a long-standing adversary. Others, including prominent Democratic figures like former Vice President Kamala Harris, slammed the move as unlawful and unwise, arguing it violated international law and could destabilize the region. Internationally, Latin American responses were split. Argentina's president hailed it as a victory for freedom, while Brazil and other nations condemned the incursion as a violation of sovereignty. Russia, a strong Venezuelan ally, denounced the operation as armed aggression and a dangerous precedent. In Venezuela, with Maduro in US custody, Venezuela's Supreme Court appointed Vice President Delcy Rodriguez as interim leader, but she openly rejected the legitimacy of Maduro's capture and vowed resistance. Legal and geopolitical ripples law experts have raised serious questions about the legal basis for capturing a sitting president without an international mandate, noting that under international law, this move likely contravenes the UN Charter. This operation isn't just another headline. It represents a dramatic shift in long-standing US foreign policy, the potential remake of Venezuelan governance, and a test of international norms about sovereignty and military force. Part 2. Ukraine's 90% ready peace deal, the context of war. As 2026 began, Ukraine has been locked in a brutal, full-scale conflict with Russia since February 2022. Years of fighting have exacted a massive toll on cities, infrastructure, and lives across both nations. Efforts to achieve peace have ebbed and flowed, with Western countries heavily involved in diplomacy, sanctions, and military support for Kyiv. The peace framework emerges. In late 2025, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced in a New Year's address that a peace agreement to end the war was about 90% ready. This refers to a diplomatic framework, a 20-point peace plan developed with US backing that covers issues such as security guarantees for Ukraine, reconstruction funding, prisoner exchanges, demilitarized zones, territorial arrangements, and more, many of which were reportedly agreed upon between Ukraine and its allies. The troubling remaining 10%. While 90% of the outline is in place, the remaining 10% includes the most politically charged and existential questions, especially the future status of occupied and contested territories such as the Donbas region, whether Ukraine must cede control over parts of its sovereign territory, how long-term security guarantees would be enforced, what role international forces would play in peacekeeping. Zelensky stressed that Ukraine wants peace, but not at any cost. He warned that a weak deal could simply fuel war, not end it. High-level diplomacy and motion diplomacy has been intense. Zelensky met with President Trump in Florida to discuss security guarantees and the peace plan. European and Canadian leaders held talks on peace efforts and reaffirmed cautious optimism while acknowledging complications. Despite optimism, Russia has remained reluctant to accept the peace framework without significant territorial and political concessions, a non-starter for Kyiv. What's next? Negotiators are planning further talks and possibly a summit with NATO and European allies. But even as 2026 begins with hope of peace, fighting continues on the ground, with recent drone strikes and military actions underscoring that diplomacy and battlefield realities remain intertwined. In short, 90% ready doesn't mean peace is imminent. It means there's structure and momentum behind negotiations, but the toughest issues may determine whether a deal ends the war or leaves it frozen for years. Part 3. The Constellation. Tragedy. A deadly fire and criminal probe. The night of the fire on New Year's Eve, January 1st, 2026, one of the worst tragedies in recent Swiss history, unfolded at a popular bar and nightclub called Constellation in the ski resort town of Crans-Montana Valley, Switzerland. At around 1:30 a.m. local time, a blaze erupted inside the packed venue. The fire spread with astonishing speed, engulfing the space and trapping revelers. Initial reports suggest the fire was accidentally ignited when sparkler candles attached to champagne bottles came too close to the flammable ceiling insulation, triggering a flashover and a rapid inferno. Human toll. The consequences were devastating. At least 40 people were killed. Another 119 were injured, many severely. Families were left waiting anxiously for identification of their loved ones. Many victims came from multiple countries, including Switzerland, France, Italy, and beyond, as tourists and visitors. Hospitals were overwhelmed, intensive care units filled, and forensic teams worked to identify the dead through DNA, dental records, and personal belongings. Chaos and panic, videos and witness accounts described chaotic scenes as flames raced across the ceiling, and partygoers struggled to evacuate through narrow exits. A collapsed ceiling blocked some escape routes, escalating the tragedy. The criminal investigation Swiss prosecutors have now opened a criminal investigation into the bar's 2 managers. They are suspected of negligent homicide, bodily harm by negligence, causing a fire through negligence. Police are investigating whether safety rules were followed, including whether indoor sparklers were permitted, whether the ceiling materials met fire codes, whether emergency exits and evacuation plans complied with regulations, whether overcrowding or permit violations occurred. This probe treats the bar and its ownership as a potential crime scene, with lawyers, forensics, and public prosecutors working to determine responsibility. a community in mourning. Crans, Montana, a scenic resort known for winter sports, luxury tourism, and lively nightlife, now finds itself in mourning. Flags have flown at half-mast, memorials have sprung up, and families await word about missing relatives. Even as investigators comb the remains of the Constellation, questions about fire safety enforcement in crowded venues are reverberating across Europe and beyond. Remember to subscribe, like, share, and turn on the notification bell. These three stories, a dramatic military operation in Latin America, a fragile but potentially historic diplomatic breakthrough in Eastern Europe, and a tragic nightclub fire in the Swiss Alps, illustrate the way world events can be both geopolitical and deeply human. In Caracas, decades of political turmoil boiled over into a bold intervention with worldwide implications. In Kiev and Washington, diplomats and leaders grapple with how to end a war that has reshaped the security landscape of Europe. In Crans, Montana, a celebration meant to welcome a new year turned into a night of loss and grief. And now, a criminal inquiry that could change how public spaces are regulated. All of these events are still unfolding, and as the world watches, each will have lasting impacts on local communities and international relations.